you've repeatedly said, the government have repeatedly said that no deal is better than a bad deal. Is that where we are now, given the fact that Parliament has roundly decided that Theresa May's deal is a bad deal?
Over the last week or so, I've detected a growing willingness of my colleagues on both sides of the House and amongst those who voted Leave and Remain to come to an agreement. And I think that there's a growing understanding that it's in everyone's interest to do so. I think that there was, for the Labour MPs, they had a party commitment to try to vote for a general election in a confidence vote and vote against the government's deal. They've done both of those. A lot of my colleagues took a hardline position over the Irish backstop. They've done that. Fine, now let's look to see where we can find a compromise. The government is looking to see on that Irish issue whether we can make progress. And if you think about it, the Irish government doesn't want to have a hard border with the UK. We don't want to have a hard border with the Irish government. The problem is that the mechanism in the withdrawal agreement could have caught the UK in a customs union potentially indefinitely. That's what a huge number of MPs were concerned about. Now, if we can find a way to satisfy the desire of both governments in a different mechanism, then that would potentially be a way forward.
But if not, and there is no sign that Dublin or indeed Brussels has changed its mind on this, if there is no movement on the backstop, then surely are you going to say that the government's position then should still remain to be no deal?
Well, the law in Britain says that the European treaties will no longer apply to Britain after the 29th of March. So there are two ways to avoid that. One would be to change the law. The second would be to get to a deal. If you were to change the law and you were to extend Article 50, that would almost certainly mean that Britain would have to fight the European elections under the law. I can't see that the European Parliament would be too thrilled to have 70 British MEPs stuck there who didn't want to be there. And I can't imagine British taxpayers would be willing to happily pay the cost of that campaign. It also would require the EU to want to do it.
Do you think George Osborne's wrong when he says it's almost inevitable now that Article 50 will be extended?
Yes, I'm not sure at all that that's right. I think that the best thing to do is for us to reach an agreement so we can get the withdrawal agreement through and begin negotiations on our future trading relationship with Europe as quickly as possible. Extending Article 50 or taking any of the other delaying tactics that are being set out extends the uncertainty of business. The best thing that we can do for business is come to an agreement quickly. Parliamentarians now need to realise they promised the British people they would leave the European Union. They now need to find a way that they can do it expeditiously, because that's good for Britain, it's good for the European Union, and it's good for both our businesses.
Now, we've got an opposition motion that's potentially going to go through or go to Parliament next week. It looks like it may well go through. Again, isn't that Parliament suggesting and voting, taking back control, that actually it doesn't want no deal? And isn't that a good thing?
Well, Parliament has to recognise that it's got to deliver on the referendum. And some people will take the view that this is a pragmatic view, but there are some people, let's remember, who don't want Brexit to happen at all. And we live in a country that's got a Leave majority in the population, but a Remain majority in Parliament. And Parliament has to recognise that in the UK, we have avoided the fragmentation of politics that's occurred in many European continental countries. At the last election in Britain, our two main parties got 80% of the vote, far more than has happened in any recent European election. I want to avoid that fragmentation, and the best way to avoid that is for Parliament to deliver on its promise on the referendum.
But would Article 50 be expedient even for you? Because you're not in a position now to extend these EU trade deals that are in place, because they're not going to be in place by the 29th of March, is that right?
Well, many of them will be.
But not all of them.
Well, there are some of them are not in operation at the present time. We've got one or two partners who don't believe that no deal is a possibility and say to me, we're not going to put the work into the preparation because we believe it's inevitable that you will reach a deal. My view is it's likely, but it's not inevitable. So let's not leave our businesses exposed any more than they have to be, and let's ensure that we do the work. If we're over-prepared, no business is going to complain about that.
And just very finally, you've got a message for Brussels. You're talking to a European audience. What is your message to Brussels? What do you want to see them do over the next couple of weeks? Because at the moment, they are pretty clear that on this issue of the backstop, on this issue of the withdrawal agreement that was thumpingly defeated last week, they are not going to move. So what do you want them to do? My view is that everyone should stand back, recognise that Britain has voted to leave the European Union, but Britain wants to be an active partner in an economic
cooperation with the European Union. It's in all our interests to do so. And here we are in Davos at a time of rising global protection, where we've seen a big drop in the growth in the Chinese economy. Potentially not great news coming out of the Japanese economy today. The French and German economies are more fragile than they've been for some time. This is not a time to put politics ahead of our trade and our business activity. So it's time for everyone to take a step back, and we need to be rational about the opportunities that we have in front of us.